The rain had just begun to fall when Lena hurried across the street with her 7-year-old daughter, holding the small hand that depended entirely on her. The night felt heavier than her steps, heavier even than the fears she had carried for years, the fear of failing as a mother, the fear of not providing enough, the fear of being judged for showing up to a blind date with a child. But she had no choice. The babysitter canceled last minute. Her boss had reduced her hours after her mother fell ill, and the debts sitting on her kitchen counter were a silent, suffocating reminder that she could not afford to lose any opportunity life offered, even if it came in the shape of a stranger waiting for her in an upscale cafe she had never stepped into. What she didn't know, what she couldn't imagine, was that the man she was about to meet had been part of her life far longer than this date, hidden behind unsigned donation slips, unseen scholarship approvals, and the quiet kindness that had kept her daughter fed through the hardest winter of her life. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us humanity still exists, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world. Lena pushed the glass door open, feeling embarrassingly out of place. Everything inside seemed too polished, too warm, too welcoming, contrasted sharply with her damp shoes, her worn sweater, and her daughter's slightly faded coat. She tried to smooth her hair, tried to appear composed, but the truth was, she felt small. She felt exposed. Her daughter, however, looked around with innocent excitement, as if she had stepped into a palace where every light was lit just for her. And maybe, Lena thought with a bittersweet smile, that innocence was her daughter's greatest gift, the ability to find wonder where Lena only found worry. The host led them to a private table, where a tall man in a charcoal suit sat with his back turned. Lena felt her breath catch when he stood, revealing a face she had never seen but instantly recognized as someone who belonged in boardrooms, magazines, and worlds far above her own. He greeted her with a calm expression, though his eyes flickered in surprise when he saw the child holding on to her. Lena immediately began apologizing in a rush, explaining the babysitter cancellation and her inability to reschedule. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, expecting him to be irritated or uncomfortable. But instead, something softened in his gaze, something that looked almost familiar. Richard Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, had not expected this blind date to be anything more than a polite dinner arranged by a friend who insisted he needed a break from work. He had agreed reluctantly, though he had no desire for superficial conversations or forced connections. But when he turned and saw Lena standing there with her daughter, something inside him shifted unexpectedly. Not because he saw a child, but because he recognized the face of that child, those same small eyes that had stared up at him from the photo the charity center sent every time he renewed the sponsorship. Her name had been circled in red ink on his desk more times than he could count. The letters they sent, written in the innocent, shaky handwriting of a little girl, were tucked in a drawer he never allowed anyone else to clean. And now, by sheer fate or divine intervention, here she was, standing in front of him in real life, with no idea who he was to her. Lena, completely unaware of the storm of recognition happening inside Richard's mind, settled her daughter in the seat beside her and braced herself for judgment. She expected the worst because it was often what life gave her, pity, criticism, or polite excuses to leave early. But Richard didn't leave, didn't recoil, didn't even look remotely troubled. Instead, he asked if the little girl was hungry, offered her the children's menu, and gently slid crayons the waiter brought toward her. His actions were so natural, so respectful, that Lena found herself relaxing without meaning to. There was warmth in his presence, a steadiness she hadn't felt around anyone in years. As they talked, Lena found herself opening up, not revealing everything but speaking enough for him to glimpse the quiet battles she fought daily. She told him about working 2 jobs, about caring for her aging mother, about wanting her daughter to grow up believing she deserved more than life had so far given them. She didn't complain, she simply shared, and somehow her honesty made the air between them more real than any date Richard had ever sat through. Meanwhile, her daughter occasionally leaned on her shoulder, showing her drawings, whispering about how fancy the place looked, giggling softly at the tiny umbrella in her smoothie. And every time the child smiled, Richard felt a tug in his heart deeper than he expected. He watched Lena interact with her child, gentle, patient, protective, and he saw resilience. He saw love in its purest form. As the night went on, the rain outside turned into a steady downpour, casting a shimmering reflection against the windows. The cafe lights glowed softly, creating an almost cinematic moment. 3 people, strangers yet connected by invisible threads, sharing food and warmth while the world blurred outside. Lena caught Richard studying her daughter with an expression she couldn't quite name, something between familiarity and emotion. She brushed it off as simple kindness, unaware that he was watching the very child whose medical bills he had helped pay, whose school fees he had silently covered, and whose holiday gift he had anonymously sent last year when Lena couldn't afford one. She had never known who the sponsor was. He had always insisted the charity keep his identity private, but she had prayed for that unknown person more times than she could count. When dinner ended, Richard insisted on walking them to the bus stop. Lena tried to decline, but he gently reassured her, explaining the storm was too strong to let them walk alone. Her daughter happily skipped between them, holding both their hands like she had known him forever. And perhaps, in some strange way, she had, through letters, through kindness, through the unseen generosity that had shaped her early years. Richard wanted to tell Lena the truth then and there, but something held him back. Not fear, not hesitation, just the intuition that the moment wasn't right yet. He didn't want her to feel indebted, didn't want her to think his interest in her was out of charity. He wanted her to know he saw her, not her struggles, not her hardships, but her. Over the next few weeks, something gentle and unexpected unfolded. Richard asked to see Lena again, and each time, she hesitated but agreed. They met in parks, cafes, places where her daughter could run, laugh, and feel free. And each time, he grew more attached, not just to Lena, but to the bond forming naturally with her child. He learned the little girl loved drawing animals, dreamed of becoming a vet, and always saved half her snack for mommy because she worried about her eating enough. He learned Lena rarely bought anything for herself, always putting her daughter first. He learned how strong she truly was. The truth, the sponsorship, the years of quiet support sat heavily inside him. It wasn't guilt, it was the desire to be honest. He didn't want secrets to define the connection growing between them, but he feared she might misinterpret his intentions, might think he had pursued her out of responsibility rather than genuine affection. Lena, meanwhile, was fighting her own internal war. She hadn't let anyone close in years, hadn't trusted anyone beyond the small world she had built. But Richard's presence was steady, kind, and unforced. He didn't try to fix her life, he simply walked beside her through it. And in quiet moments, she found herself wishing she could believe he saw her as more than a struggling mother. Everything changed the night her daughter became sick at school. Lena had no money for a taxi, no one to call, and the hospital bills loomed like a shadow she dreaded to face. But when she arrived breathless at the emergency room, Richard was already there. No one had called him, but he arrived, as if he could sense something was wrong. He handled the paperwork, paid the bills without hesitation, and stayed by her side the entire night. Lena sat in the sterile hospital hallway, overwhelmed, tears silently falling as she watched him watch over her daughter like she were his own. It was too much, too kind, too inexplicable. Later that night, when her daughter slept peacefully, Richard finally told her everything. He told her about the sponsorship, about the anonymous donations, about the letters he kept in his drawer. Lena didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She simply listened, feeling as though the world had tilted beneath her in the most unexpected way. Her first reaction wasn't anger or gratitude. It was disbelief that someone had cared so much for so long without expecting anything in return. All those nights she had prayed for the unknown sponsor, all those times she wished she could thank the person who kept her daughter's world intact, they all came crashing back in a wave of emotion so powerful it stole her breath. For the first time in years, Lena felt something in her heart unlock. Trust, hope, the possibility of something more. And Richard, in that quiet hospital room, looked at her not as someone he had helped, but as someone he had grown to care for deeply. The air between them shifted, carrying unspoken truth, unspoken feelings, and the delicate promise of what life could become if she allowed it. Weeks later, life began to brighten in small, meaningful ways. Richard became a constant presence, not replacing anything, but adding warmth where there had been coldness for too long. He supported Lena's dreams, encouraged her to apply for a better job, helped her mother find proper care, and made her daughter laugh the genuine, carefree laugh of a child who finally felt secure. Lena, slowly but surely, let the walls around her heart come down. She realized Richard's kindness wasn't obligation, it was love. And she found herself loving him in return, not because he rescued them, but because he stood beside them with integrity and tenderness.